what I want to discuss is about the cultural challenges in corporation, but especially for human resources. What does it mean? What keeps HR up at night? This is super important. And the thing is that there have been several challenges that HR has been facing. Like if you think about it, one of the biggest one would be balancing remote, hybrid, and in-office work. That's a mess, in fact, to manage. Reimagining employee well-being, that is something that they didn't used to do back in the days of pre-COVID. Rethinking the employee value proposition. So especially in today's competitive work, it has been very challenging in order to manage that. And I was mentioning this episode to Jackie. Before COVID, there was already the problem of the huge workload for human resources people. Because let me tell you a secret. From the business perspective, HR haven't been really utilizing automation tools that were edgy enough so that they had the time to allocate for the people. And it was quite stressful. So today, in fact, my guest is the director of talent and culture at the Fairmont San Francisco, a pure human resources person with whom we are going to be discussing about this stress, this workload, these challenges that human resources is having today. Jackie, thank you very much for making it today. It is a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. This is my first podcast, Yvonne. So I'm
Jackie,
nervously excited and
it,
eager.
it's amazing, in fact, that it is your first podcast because now you are not going to be formatted about choosing what you are going to be saying. And this is amazing, Jackie. Um, I'm super curious. So, you have been working for in the human resources area for close to 17 years, or maybe even more. I'm not
Yes.
sure. And so, what made you stay in human resources for such a long time?
It's a great question. I love that question. I am a naturally curious person. And one of the things that I'm super curious about is human behavior. And so I love just observing different human behavior and understanding people's thought process, how they're feeling, and what their unique characteristics are, what their background is that has led them to be who they are today. Working in hospitality, I think it is so interesting because I interact with hundreds of people a day that I naturally get that stimulation all the time. So through meeting so many different people, whether it's at work or the benefit of working in hospitality is traveling all over the world, I get a diverse perspective at a rapid amount every single day. And it's so interesting because I think it is also a method for me to learn.
Hmm. Uh, Jackie, you mentioned this. I don't know if we can call it complexity, but this diversity, we say, of different backgrounds, different nationalities, different lifestyles, because you have specifically in your industry, you have people who are just doing manual work, and you have people in the office. So there is a diversity of like, let's say, different cultures. Now,
Mm-hmm.
work culture is the 2024 word of the year for human resources because there is a lot of things that needs to be still amended. So what have you perceived specifically in this hospitality industry as the biggest challenges of work culture? I mean, including language barriers, cultural difference, people,
Mm-hmm.
transient workforce moving here and there. What have you observed in terms of these work culture challenges?
Oh, so many things, Yvonne. Where to begin? I think one of the biggest challenges that is new, because from my perspective and my experience, everything you just mentioned has been something I've experienced throughout my entire career. Language barriers, different levels of the workforce. I think something that is somewhat new. Well, there's a few things that are new. One being a term called cultural intelligence. So you've probably heard emotional intelligence, that term. Now there is this topic of conversation called cultural intelligence. And cultural intelligence is essentially what I just explained in terms of having the skills and the um, the desire to understand human behavior, the desire to build your own self-awareness and understand and unpack your own background so that you have empathy and the desire to do the same for other people. Now, remember, in the context of humans, because hospitality is service provided by humans,
Mhm.
we're constantly surrounded by humans, which is also why cultural intelligence continues to be more and more a topic of conversation, because whether you're a leader or whether you are someone working in the hotel at a line level position, you're interacting with internal and external humans. And so it becomes awfully challenging when you don't have the skills or the desire to understand humans,
Mm.
whether it's a basic level or at a deeper level, so that you understand how to interact with humans. And in this case, how to provide service to humans that is not transactional.
Mm.
And I
Exactly.
think that's one of the biggest challenges, unique challenges, which sounds sort of ironic because we work in hospitality, but it's also ironic that we work in hospitality and service has become so transactional. And there's this heightened awareness that it has become transactional, um, and we're looking for solutions.
Mm.
I'd say that's one challenge.
What you're saying is quite interesting because, in fact, it's part of the core of your business because you want to offer to people memorable experiences. So it cannot be transactional because then I will forget your face, I
Yes.
will forget the face. No, you have to remember that there was that face who gave you that experience so that they related to the core of your business. You feel at home or you feel well treated in a given environment, like in your case, it would be Fairmont. Now, the you know that it's not very often that I hear the word cultural intelligence. Um, and I think that maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I remember reading an article, I don't know if it was HBR or I'm just inventing, about the link between cultural intelligence and this agility or adaptability, because in order to be culturally intelligent, you have to be able to move from one surrounding, one environment, and adapt quickly to the next person who might have different characteristics or a different cohort of people and be adaptable to that. And that thing is a bloody challenge. It's like,
Yes.
I remember that in that article, it was mentioned that, in fact, that it was more linked to feminine traits than masculine traits. So men have more challenges to adapt frequently, like, and if you put a woman in a position where they need high adaptability to changing interactions, human interactions, it goes quicker. Some people
Yes.
naturally, uh, but I do believe that you can work it out. That even men can learn from women what works or not.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we started to do here, because I found in my experience that we had data, but it wasn't in one place. And so it was difficult to look at data in one place to determine where were we before, where are we now, and where are we going, and develop a strategy based on people analytics, essentially.
Mhm.
And um, and I hear what you're saying in terms of gender, and that's also why we started to look at the data, because we wanted to see, okay, of the people analytics, in addition to gender, what are some of the other pieces of data telling us. And one of the complexities, if you want to call it a complexity, is has to do with change in the hotel and in our potentially in our brand in general. But specifically at this hotel, what our data told us was that we were one generation generally in the hotel, and now we've moved to a multi-generational hotel. And we didn't have the infrastructure to support a multi-generational employee workforce. We were set up for systems and processes and standards where we heavily relied on that institutional knowledge, and we could rely on it for decades.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now that we're multi-generational and we've seen people leave and we've seen people's priorities in terms of their career and development change, and sometimes there are themes, sometimes there are no themes. All of this was different. And on top of having data in one place and being able to see this story unfold. So that's where we also started with finding solutions to some of these challenges that we had, which was to look at the data.
Yeah. But in fact, it's always a very good and efficient starting point to identify the specific needs of a given cohort, like if it is generational, if it is just because of nationalities, or if whatever it is, the type of position that you have a specific solution. But I'm curious, so have you guys cracked this cultural intelligence? How do you train people other than the traditional trainings of that is lasting hours and so on? Have you found a way to make them change behaviors?
Yes, we have found a way to scale quickly self-awareness and build on self-awareness in a way that people begin to tap into their own natural curiosity about other people. So in essence, it is small doses of focus groups where we do activities that are human-centric, and it is storytelling essentially. So we take the whole hotel through this process of learning about themselves, and for example, using their 6 dimensions of diversity, and going through the process of unpacking what are those 6 dimensions of diversity, what are those unique characteristics for each individual. And it's something as simple as 30 minutes where you sit with a partner and you share about yourself. And there's a certain level of vulnerability that goes into that. That is the beauty of this exercise, because it unleashes a certain level of empathy that many, in my experience in this hotel, have not experienced before, or it's been a while since they've experienced. So they're learning something new, or they are having the opportunity to feel seen and heard because they are sharing with someone else about themselves. So there's an exchange between the two people. It hits on so many nails. You learn about yourself, you're vulnerable, you build relationships. Because there are some people in the hotel that have worked side by side with each other for decades, and they don't really know the person next to them below the surface. So it really is a great, quick, easy way to scale, getting to know people, creating a human-centric culture in a fairly quickly way in a building with over 1,000 people. So that methodology in different ways, I would say, has been effective.
I think you are into something, because I have the impression that curiosity is the center to many of the challenges that we have culturally, like for instance, about diversity and inclusion, because if I remember correctly, 10 years ago, diversity inclusion, it was like about being mindful about the type of questions that we can ask to other people, but that was completely wrong. As minorities, I feel like I'm a minority because I live in the Western Europe, even though my origin is Latin American. So as a minority, I, I kind of like and I can feel when people are really curious about my background. But I can also feel when there is a bias about my background. The way we generate questions based on curiosity maps a little bit reactions. So, and curiosity is almost at the core of many of the challenges I mentioned: diversity and inclusion, growth mindset. Like if people can ask any bloody questions in the middle of a room without shame of being judged, that is perfect. So you are into something, Jackie. That's amazing.
I think we also have forgotten at times here that people also change. And and so it's a framework that anyone can use throughout their life, assuming that people will evolve. So the story that you may have shared or that you may have heard from someone some time ago is likely, in my experience, going to change.
Mm,
And oftentimes people enjoy, they look forward to sharing their story and talking about themselves in that type of format. So it's a great way to learn about people who work with each other for a very long time and how they've evolved.
mm.
And it's fun. It's so much fun.
Indeed, it is. And it's natural in human beings. So you just have to tap it a little bit in order that this behavior reproduces and, as you say, goes into scale because it's the original
Absolutely.
scalability. Now, I want to move. So we just discussed about the challenges in the hospitality industry, the challenges regarding culture. But now I want to put the lens into human resources. So what what are some of the challenges that HR have been facing? And you specifically, as an HR director, what are the challenges that you have been facing because of these many changes since COVID?
Oh, so many, Yvonne. But where I'll focus the conversation is generally it's change management that we struggle with. And in the context of Fairmont, which is it's a legacy brand, it has this particular brand is the flagship. Sorry, this particular hotel is the flagship, meaning it was the first Fairmont hotel. And it's over 100 years old. So there's so much history in the building. The history is what the hotel is known for. It's how we've built the reputation of the hotel. So there's an endless amount of pros when it comes to those characteristics. However, it also creates a natural pull back to that history versus ideally a balance of where are we in the present, understanding the present, and considering the future. I find that that creates also an environment where change is looked at potentially negatively because there's so much discomfort and people, it hasn't been part of the conversation to evolve and that things will change and change is positive and change can mean anything. Change is associated with a growth mindset and can benefit everyone personally and professionally. We also didn't have a framework to manage change. So it wasn't part of the conversation, and we didn't have an infrastructure to help people recognize, acknowledge change, and manage through change, whether it was for themselves or if they're leading a team. Where oftentimes in this building, you're leading a team who have worked for the hotel for potentially 40 plus years. And that generation oftentimes wants to be comfortable with doing the same thing over and over. And I have found that what got us here won't get us there.
Hmm. And Jackie, you are right. I'm just thinking loud about it. You made me think that one of the most famous change management models, ProSci. I mean, in the case of a legacy of mindset, this
Mm.
this change management model wouldn't really work because you are fighting with resistance that has influence. The guy who has been working for 40 years in the hotel has sometimes even more influence than the general manager of that.
Yes, you are totally right. I believe the same, absolutely. But I think what has been effective that wasn't part of the conversation before was that everyone is here because they want to grow their career.
Hmm.
And that's a common theme, whether you've worked here for decades, for over 40 years, or you've been here for a couple of months. And it has been important to understand how everyone defines that. For some people, their career is defined by sustainability and being able to put their kids through college. So being able to have a consistent schedule and consistent days off to spend time with their family and build their retirement fund. For some people, it is truly to climb the ladder and achieve different titles and learn new skills. And so when you make that a part of the conversation and part of this idea of empathy when you're interacting with people, that everyone is here to build their career, there's an understanding. You build an understanding that it's not this traditional sense of, oh, that person's being selfish because they selfishly want to build their career. Instead, it's, well, how can I help that person build their career because they're going to help me build mine? And one of the things that has been effective in building everyone's careers is, as a leader, to be here to work for the people, because the person that's going to be here for decades longer than you, if you make them happy and create an environment where they thrive, they will do good by you. They will do anything that you want them to do. They will drive results so that you can take credit and you can build your career and have all of the KPI results that you need.
That is true. Jackie, but okay, so we are discussing about the specific challenges of human resources. Now, I mentioned at the beginning this story that it might be true or not. My assumption is that pre-COVID human resources was very often considered as an administrative entity, and there was a lot of work load, like manual work, that you had to deal with thousands. I have seen people with thousands of Excel files and stuff like that, and suddenly it might be that the business has put more stuff on your lap. So is it stressful? Did it become better?
Yes, it's stressful. I think it's always been stressful, Yvonne. But there's a few things. I think that there has been this traditional idea that HR is policies, procedures, tasks, and unfortunately, oftentimes, a negative perception that HR is where ideas go to die, and it's sort of like the DMV, which is not a pleasant experience. And I think that unless you have the support and the resources, and again, the self-awareness, it is challenging to evolve past that and cater to the evolving needs of the people. And so going back to all of that is important. Policies, compliance, all of that, so important. But people are no longer going to tolerate simply being transactional and focusing on tasks. They they will, and they are demanding, call it training or demonstration of those skills that are human centric.
Mm.
And they they will demand and require HR departments, which, you know, it's not and shouldn't just be HR, but it should be the whole hotel ideally. Infrastructure and process and procedures that are human centric and celebrate human individual characteristics.
Oh, this is amazing because you just made me think that like maybe 2 weeks ago, I remember that a company that I have been working with like kind of 4 years ago, suddenly I saw them again, and I remember reading their policies, and there was some policies that were 20 pages long, and today is just a one pager
Mm,
with natural language, not some type of legal person who drafted something that nobody understands, and that was impressive.
that's a great example. And I mean, it makes me think about another example where, um, you know, oftentimes our policies, they don't reflect the current state of people and what they want, whether it's a requirement of being in a certain position for a certain amount of time before you are allowed to be considered for another position. Well, in that example, our data shows that our people want to be and are qualified in a quicker amount of time than we've ever seen before. And so it's to our benefit to create development processes and procedures to support the talent, because the world has changed, which has probably led them to learn faster, move quicker, be more agile, which is a good thing. And so that's also something that was not part of the conversation. We didn't celebrate before, and now we're recognizing, acknowledging, and evolving our processes so that we can utilize our talent effectively
Mm.
and create retention.
Exact. When you look back at your career in human resources, what do you wish you would have known starting out about building and maintaining a strong work culture? What is the thing that you wish you knew way before?
Yeah, I would say the one of the biggest things is I don't think that there was a heavy emphasis on being a data analyst. And again, in the context of data informs us of so much. And it is facts that you can't argue with. And it is the element that will create a strategy that is effective in the sense that it evolves with what the people want. And in the context of human resources in a human-centric industry, that is such a powerful tool. And so I wish that there was dedicated emphasis on the skills to be able to assess and analyze data for purposes of the bigger picture and telling this story and creating a path forward that in the context of this hotel celebrates the past, helps understand the current present nature of the building, and helps to inform the future.
That's interesting. Um, in your opinion, so we say that the role of human resources changed when we compare pre-COVID versus post-COVID. And now when we look at the people, the employees, what were the good and bad that happened to HR people post-COVID? What happened to HR people because of COVID?
I mean, I know from my own experience, the bad was that it became transactional because there was this fear of doing something wrong, getting it wrong, saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing. And so it became very policy standard driven where there wasn't any wiggle room. And so it became one transaction after the other with hundreds of people a day. But I think what came of that was the good, which, because people didn't want that, it led me to learn more and lean more into my genuine curiosity. And for example, I attended the UC Berkeley Executive Institute for Coaching to become a certified executive coach. And through that program, it really helps me to understand how the power of coaching and my natural ability to ask questions and connect with people in a unique way that is a superpower for me, I've realized. But that program was extensive, it's rigorous, and it was a long program. It was nearly a year. So during that program, again, it started with self-awareness. So it took me through unpacking my background and my history and learning so many new things about myself that helped me unlock an understanding and a level of self-awareness that I didn't know I had, which helped to inform me and teach me how to do the same with our humans in the building, whether internal or external. And so I like the word that you used earlier. I reproduced it at scale in the hotel and created an environment where it's based on coaching. And going back to hospitality being a very traditional industry where it is very much based on hierarchy, coaching has been a change in our culture where we moved from telling people what to do to coaching our staff and our colleagues and our employees, and building an environment where people thrive because they can contribute based on their individual thought process. And it's not a transactional in a box type of approach when they interact with guests or when they interact with each other.
As you have mentioned, coaching, in fact, for me, it is not scalable if only few people know how to coach. In order to be scalable and something that enhances productivity of people, it needs to be like something that naturally any manager should naturally, I'm not saying naturally like coming from the sky, but naturally like any manager should be capable of coaching others, because that's the only multiplier that you have. Otherwise, coaching cannot be just like 5 people around who knows how to coach and the rest of the managers are do not know how to do it. And I like your story that from these beginnings of being cautious, having fears, in fact, you had quick iterations of reactions of people, and that make you learn because you had the feedback on the spot, because they were talking. Yes, in COVID, any employee was started to voice, to lose the fear of saying what they think. And that was quite powerful in order to learn. And it was natural at the beginning. Nobody knew what to do. It was the first time ever that we had this type of crisis. And at the same time, disruptive changes on the mindset of employees, that this time they were focusing a little bit more about themselves. Any employee, including human resources, were thinking about, what the hell am I doing? And that was a good thing. And by the way, it makes me also think about that. I don't know how it was, because I had already left my corporate life, but in social media, human resources for the first time ever was really voicing out their concerns. They were talking about well-being. They were also bitching about the company, saying we don't do enough. And God, that was true. And suddenly I think employees have recognized that behind human resources, there was there were people who were also empathizing with the situation,
Mhm.
because we were talking about employees, but we were excluding the human resources. Now we know that they were in the same boat, suffering the same level of stress, mental health challenges, and so on, like anybody else. And that, I think that made that finally employees and human resources were in the same bucket.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it leads me to think about listening. When one opens themselves up to listen, and when I say listen, it's truly taking the time to be present and hear what a person has to say versus listening to respond. There's so
Mm.
much power in listening to what people are saying, as you said. And I think that in my experience, listening was lacking because it was based on fear. You're fearful of what you're going to hear, you're fearful of not being able to respond, you're fearful of all of these different things when you truly listen. But I think when one learns to listen and exercises it and experiences it, in my experience, it's not as scary and it's a lot more effective.
Yeah. And it's easy to get formatted by the sometimes by the corporate also fear, in fact, the fear of not looking good enough in front of our bosses. And
Mhm.
then we are not listening. As you say, we are preparing the answer so that we look smart and not really listening.
Absolutely.
Um, Now we were talking about these challenges of mental health, and I wanted to ask you directly, Jackie. So, how being an HR director, uh, how do you manage the stress and challenges that come with your job? What do you do in order to manage that stress?
Oh, what I did yesterday is not the same thing that I do today. I think that has been helpful is to have a variety of different tools that have evolved over time because the challenges that I have faced in life in general have evolved over time. And I think that having a growth mindset is crucial to managing through these challenges. And understanding that just as much as I can expect the worst, that equally so I can also expect amazing things to happen. It's not easy. I when I say a variety of different tools, it has been coaching for me. So I do have my own executive coach. Um, and I think it's also putting myself first. So on a day-to-day basis, it's little things like um, creating boundaries with people and saying no strategically to people. And it's a mindset shift for me, thinking about myself first with every thought that I have. I sense HR people can probably empathize with me in that being in HR, I've been trained to think about others. And I almost feel like working in hospitality, it's a double whammy in the sense that you're trained in HR to think about and serve others, but also in hospitality, you're literally there to serve other people. So it has been hard to be faced with that double whammy and a shift of mindset. But I think that I have experienced it for so long that it has led me to build that self-awareness so that I can discover what my purpose is, what is meaningful to me, what are my values, and are the tasks or the things that I am getting done or that I'm doing, do they match those values? Because what I've also learned is that it could be the littlest thing or the biggest thing. And if it doesn't match the person's values, by no coincidence, they are not going to want to do that.
And you are totally right when you put the focus on yourself, because how can you help others if you are not yourself in the good mindset and the good in a good shape? I also like the part where you're mentioning about managing our expectations, that things can go wrong, things can be amazing, but what we know from psychology, from science, is that our brain naturally always forecasts the future in the wrong way. We expect to be happier if we get that promotion, or if we get that marriage, or I don't know, or that things are going to be worse than in the reality. And managing that little thing, that if we leave our brain in autopilot, is already quite challenging for most of us. It took me time to re relearn, or learn, in fact, how to manage my anxiety that was directed about thinking, living only always on the future instead of focusing on the now. Oh, by the way, Jackie, because you mentioned Berkeley and your coaching and stuff, your coaching training, sorry,
Yes.
coaching stuff. My God, how am I talking? So, and I remember that Berkeley has like a department that is only about happiness. And I think that they mention very often this story about managing expectations as a way to drive happiness. I remember that I did a training a long time ago online, not it wasn't Berkeley, about the science of happiness, and they were mentioning exactly these expectation things.
Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that, Yvonne, because I feel like I could geek out with you on the psychology of a happy mindset. I also feel like it's kind of ironic because who would have thought positive psychology is beneficial? But I guess that's also why there are and have been so many companies that have focused on this idea of positive psychology, because, as you said a little while ago, we naturally think about the negative.
Yes.
And and people have literally created so many companies and written so many books around positive psychology because there is such a market for it. But it is definitely something that culturally here we have introduced in the past few years, because again, it wasn't blatantly, obviously part of the conversation. And it is a crucial component of managing yourself through change and managing through hardship and things of that nature. But it does, in my experience, take some training, because it is a mind shift here, as an example, but so powerful, so powerful.
Just for context for the audience, so changing a mindset is not something that happens after an empowering talk by somebody.
Yes.
You need really
Yeah.
to practice, and it's about
Yes.
consistency. It's not even about doing it with intensity. 3 hours workshop, then your mindset is there. No ways, does not exist.
Yeah, that would be a perfect world, but humans are complex.
Exact. Oh, Jackie, I'm curious to know what is your opinion about human resources in general? So you were mentioning earlier on some certain technical tools, technology, in fact, that has been introduced to, for instance, to do HR analytics. And if I remember correctly, like 10 years ago, there was HR analytics. It was an Excel file with just with numbers.
Yes.
And it's more than that. Do you have the impression that human resources in general have enough technical skills to face the challenges of work culture?
I do. I think that um, everyone does have the technical skills. I'm sensing that what, for example, I experienced was the ability to evolve those technical skills in the world today where people are changing and global events are happening that if I didn't evolve my technical skills, I wouldn't be successful. And so I needed to figure out a way working in a big corporation where, they do allow you to be an entrepreneur. You have this big brand that you work under, but at the same time, you have the benefit of being an entrepreneur in that way. And because all of our hotels are so different, it's so important to be able to oftentimes figure out what that is specific to yourself and the hotel. And so when I think about technical skills, it's in the bigger picture, it is policies, procedures, standards, but also how you treat people. And I think that everyone has it in them, starting with self-awareness to learn that technical skill of self-awareness so they can reproduce that in a time like right now where people are asking for it.
I would add so that story with self-awareness is one critical point in order to start building. But then I want to come back to what you mentioned earlier on about curiosity. That curiosity, I mean, everybody has the capability. It's just that sometimes we feel that we don't have the bandwidth because there is too much stuff going on, and that we have overused our power connecting with so many people coming to the office, opening like it was their house, complaining about something, getting out. And it's about the thing is that we always believe that because of this bandwidth being used because of the stressful work environment, that we don't have any more that capability. So we drop the ball and we don't continue learning, because today is, I mean, even for free, we can get degrees, we can get access to information, something that we didn't have back then when I started working in my old times. I'm not that old, but okay, a little bit.
Yeah, I completely understand, and I know from my own experience what it led me to was to really buckle down and go through what was an uncomfortable exercise of identifying what my current values were. Because oftentimes I felt like I was running around and doing all these things, but I didn't know what the meaning or the purpose was behind it, or if it was contributing to my own values. And so it's a completely different mind shift. And I would encourage everyone to do this and sit with themselves too. And there are so many tools out there, Yvonne, you probably know, to do your own values assessment. Some can be just a few minutes, some can be extremely contemplative over time and be a series of different exercises where, it asks thought-provoking questions. And so you learn about yourself. What do you value? Whether it's something technical or behavioral or both. And so from there, what I then did was I structured myself and my team around those values, whether it was tasks or just things that I participated in, or things that I wanted to do, that I wanted to experiment with or disrupt or recreate. And so it checks so many boxes. Then I'm doing things that I really value. I'm doing things that that have meaning and purpose to me. And for anyone that is able to achieve that, work becomes so much more valuable and less of this feeling of I'm burnt out. I have given more energy to something than I wanted to or that I even enjoyed. And it really does um, drive each day, starting from what do I enjoy and what do I have fun doing.
Jackie, that resonates totally with me. What you have just mentioned. It is important for everybody to know that the fact is that burnout, for instance, doesn't come from just working many hours per day. Burnout is very often triggered by the fact that we feel that our life is out of control because we didn't take the time to think about values, purpose, where do I want to go, and we are just led by the flow, and then we feel like our life is out of control. To tell you the truth, when you are passionate about something, spending 12 hours in doing something that you enjoy is different than being 12 hours in an environment that you hate. And that
So
changes
different.
the perception.
Mhm.
So is the only difference would be that did I choose it or not? And you can only choose if you know what do you want to achieve in life. Your values and purpose are an essential part of that sense of control of your life. I loved it, Jackie. Thank you very much for mentioning that because it's really lovely that you think in that way that you are doing human resources with hearts and minds, and that's quite powerful.
Mhm. Thank
Jackie,
you.
what do we do if somebody wants to reach you out and ask you questions, share
Oh,
ex-
I love talking to people. Please reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, Jackie Dacanay, or you can reach me on my email, jackie.dacanay@fairmont.com. But LinkedIn is probably the easiest and best way. I would love to talk to people.
Jackie, it was lovely to spend time with you. It was quite refreshing, in fact, to see the way you specifically is managing that essential position that is going to become even more critical and where I'm expecting that 5 years from now, nobody's going to recognize the role of human resources because it's going to be like the place or the department where all of the other departments are going to turn around. The new sun is human resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yvonne. I loved this conversation and I'm so grateful and appreciative of the opportunity to tell my story. So
My
thank you.
pleasure, Jackie. Have an excellent day.
Thank you. You too.